Sounds True presents Unlocking the Secrets of 2012, Galactic Wisdom from the Ancient Skywatchers, with author and researcher John Major Jenkins.
A great cycle in the Maya calendar comes to completion on December 21st of the year 2012. The years around 2012 bode a situation of challenge and opportunity. The challenge and opportunity for spiritual seekers is to establish and nurture right relationship with the true self. My name is John Major Jenkins. Allow me to be your guide to unlocking the secrets of 2012. Over 2,000 years ago, a mysterious people in the jungle forests of southern Mexico raised their eyes to the heavens and perceived a cosmic knowledge so deep and so profound that it eclipses even the cherished notions of modern science. The early Maya were insightful stargazers, visionary shamans, and innovative cosmologists. They perceived a profound relationship between we human beings on Earth and the Milky Way galaxy. They understood the galaxy to be our cosmic mother, and the galactic center was recognized as our cosmic heart and source. Amidst the crumbling ruins of Mexico and Central America, the remnants of a vast and mysterious civilization whisper messages of a far-off time and a lost wisdom. Millions of Maya people are still with us today, preserving ancient traditions, ceremonies, and stories that survive like fragments of a fantastic shamanistic science. The sacred 260-day calendar, the Tzolk'in, is still followed in the remote Maya villages of highland Guatemala, and on the sacred day 8 Monkey, new daykeepers are still initiated into the mysteries of Maya time. But other aspects of Maya cosmic wisdom have become lost in the shifting sands of time, buried under the trauma of conquest. In addition to the ancient rites still practiced by the Maya, pieces of ancient Maya knowledge come down to us today in other ways. Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of Maya cities, each aligned with the heavens in specific ways. They have excavated painted ceramics, hieroglyphic texts, pictographic expositions of the Maya creation myth, carved stone monuments, and other artifacts. Today, a rich array of artifacts lay before us, awaiting decipherment and interpretation. Often, the modern Maya themselves are at a loss to help recover the true meanings of the ancient signs. So a collaboration of old and new sources of information is called for. The universities offer new interpretations of the ancient Maya civilization, its cosmoconceptions, mythologies, astronomical discoveries, sciences, and beliefs. But one artifact of Maya culture has remained unapproached by university scholars: the Maya calendar end date in 2012. Perhaps the most enduring mystery of the Maya involves the end date of the long count calendar, due to occur on December 21st of the year 2012. This date pinpoints when the current world age of 13 Baktuns, a period of 5,125 years, is set to end. In the Maya creation mythology, the Popol Vuh, we learn that humanity has passed through 4 previous eras, and at the end of each, humanity must transform itself into something completely new in order to survive. Since the mid-1980s, I have been investigating Maya science and religion, traveling to Mayan temples, living and working with the Mayan people, and pursuing a course of self-study, trying to answer the unresolved enigmas of Maya civilization. In the course of writing over a dozen books, I identified several keys to understanding the Maya calendar and its 2012 cycle ending date. One of those keys is the site that invented the 2012 calendar, a place called Izapa. At the early Maya site of Izapa, roughly 2100 years ago, ingenious shaman astronomers discovered a slow celestial cycle that changes the Earth's relationship to the heavens over many thousands of years. This slow cosmic shifting is called the precession of the equinoxes, a phenomenon caused by the slow wobbling of the Earth on its axis. The Earth wobble effectively changes our orientation to the larger galactic picture, and one wobble, or precessional cycle, is completed in 26,000 years. The Maya believed, as many ancient cultures did, that this 26,000-year period represents a cycle of spiritual unfolding for humanity. It is, in a sense, a process of human spiritual gestation. The early Maya stargazers also believed that certain types of alignments in this cycle of precession stimulate consciousness evolution on Earth. As a result of the precession of the equinoxes, in the years around 2012, the Earth will be lining up through the Sun with our Milky Way galaxy, specifically that part of the Milky Way that houses the galactic center between Sagittarius and Scorpio. In other words, precession has been causing the celestial position of the December solstice sun to slowly approach the center of our galaxy over thousands of years, and the two will be aligned in the years around 2012. The December solstice sun, or the cosmic solar father, and the galactic center, the heart of the cosmic mother, will be united. This may seem shocking, even unbelievable, yet this alignment, what we can call the galactic alignment, is an astronomical fact. Could it be that the ancient Maya calendar priests and astronomers who devised the amazing long-count calendar were tracking precession? How were they able to locate the galactic center? Who exactly invented the long count, and when? These questions became the guiding principles of my research into the Maya mysteries. When I understood the true intention behind the 2012 end date, the galactic alignment of 2012, I was able to reconstruct a lost galactic cosmology which exceeds anything yet encountered by Western science and philosophy. What we find is a brilliant expression of perennial wisdom, of the spiritual truths shared by all of the world's great religions. The Maya believed that the world will be reborn in the early 21st century. Let's look more deeply into Maya spirituality and metaphysical teachings, and grapple with difficult but very human questions, and learn from a legacy of cosmic wisdom that has something very important to say about our immediate future. Civilization in ancient Mexico goes back many thousands of years. People were in Mexico at least 10,000 years ago. We know that some fairly astounding things were going on in Mexico because of the domestication of corn. The early people of Mesoamerica teased the juicy corn kernels that we know today out of a skinny wild grain called teosinte. This was a project that stretched over hundreds and hundreds of years, crossbreeding teosinte to make corn. And corn is a very central feature of the Mesoamerican creation mythology. One of the universal ideas in Mesoamerican creation mythology is that human beings were made from corn dough. Corn is the flesh of the first human beings. And this idea really is front and center in the Mayan cosmology of the origin of human beings. We see it in the Popol Vuh, the hero twin creation mythology, which is the creation myth of the Mayan people, and we see it in many other Mesoamerican creation stories. There are caves in the Yucatan Peninsula that have art, murals in them, that are dated to about 9,000 years ago. There's a Mayan city in the Yucatan called Zibilchaltun, which was occupied some 7,000 years ago. The Olmec civilization is considered the mother civilization of Mesoamerica. And about 3,500 years ago, the Olmec people had established various cities like Leventa in the Gulf Coast region. And for quite a while, the Olmec were building cities and aligning their cities with the stars in certain ways. So we see, even at this very early stage in Mesoamerican history, that the people of Mesoamerica were very interested in their orientation to the larger cosmos. For example, the city of La Venta, which was an Olmec town that was thriving in about 1200 BC, it had a northward orientation to the stars in the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper is a constellation that revolves around the polar star, and so we know that the Olmec were oriented to the polar skies. In fact, they thought of the Big Dipper as their polar deity. This sort of sets the tone for understanding how important the sky was for the Mesoamerican people. After the Olmec went into decline around 800 BC, a short-lived but very, very important civilization arose in southern Mexico, the Izapan civilization. The Maya scholar Michael Coe considers that the Izapan civilization was very instrumental in the development of certain key institutions that later became very important for the Maya civilization, these being the Maya creation myth and the long count calendar. The central town of the Izapan civilization was a place called Izapa, which is in southern Chiapas in southern Mexico, right by the Guatemalan border. This town, Izapa, is very, very important for understanding the original revelation of the 2012 calendar. It is the place where the 2012 calendar was invented some 2,100 years ago. We know this because the first monuments carved with long count dates appear in the region of Izapa in the context of the Izapan civilization, and they are dated to the 1st century BC. This is precisely when Izapa was thriving. The carved monuments at the site of Izapa are dated between 400 BC and 100 AD, and the Izapan civilization went into decline around 100 AD, and precisely at this time, the Maya classic period as we know it starts. The messages left for us on the carved monuments of Izapa are very important for understanding what I like to refer to as the original 2012 revelation. What we have preserved on the carved monuments of Izapa are spiritual teachings and a prophecy for the great cycle ending of 2012. These are basically spiritual teachings for citizens of cycle endings. We today are living in the end times of the Maya calendar, in the great cycle ending, the years leading up to December 21st, 2012. There is a science of cycles that the Maya were very aware of. They were very tuned into the sky, and they looked around them and observed cycles in nature, plant growth, the human life cycle, and the cycles of the planets. And they understood profound things about the processes that created beings go through. Now, the Izapan civilization was a very important phase of the development of Mesoamerican cosmology. There was a shift that happened. There was a paradigm shift in which the older Olmec belief in the polar region as the supreme principle gave way to a new understanding, a new conceptualization of how human beings are related to the vast cycles of time. And it was during this time that the long count calendar was created. The long count calendar pinpoints an era of galactic alignment, an era in which human beings on Earth come into alignment with the center of our Milky Way galaxy. This bodes a situation of challenge and opportunity in which consciousness on the planet, human beings on the planet, can put themselves back into right relationship with the true cosmic center, the true self. The Maya civilization inherited these pioneering ideas from Izapa, and the classic period of the Maya stretches from about 200 AD to 900 AD. During this time, we saw all kinds of Mayan cities being built in different regions. In the Yucatan Peninsula, you had Chichen Itza, Uxmal, Tulum. Along the Usumacinta River, you had sites like Piedras Negras, Yaxchilan, Bonampak, Saksi, these amazing river sites. And in the highlands, you had the development of other Mayan groups happening, such as the Quiche, the Mam, the Quechí, the Tzutujil Maya. These Mayan groups in the highlands of Guatemala today preserve many of the hallmarks of Maya civilization, including the survival of the 260-day sacred calendar. So what are the hallmarks of Maya civilization? There are several key things that the Maya people developed that set them apart from the earlier Olmec and Izapan people. One was that Maya civilization was shamanistic. The Maya king was seen to be a high shaman, and the Maya king had to make a visionary journey into the cosmic center in order to establish himself in the position of rulership. It's sort of similar to how in Siberia today you have shamans that journey into the pole star, which for people in the far north, the pole star is seen to be the cosmic center because it's almost straight overhead and all the stars appear to rotate around it. In the far north, the Siberian shamans must make a visionary journey into the pole star in order to retrieve the sacred power and the sacred knowledge and the healing abilities. So too with the Maya shaman. The Maya king shaman had to make a visionary journey into the cosmic center in order to establish himself as a ruler and being able to, in a sense, download the cosmic knowledge and disperse the organizational energies into the kingdom. For the Maya people, however, they live much closer to the tropical equator, and the skies are very different in the tropical zone. The pole star is very low on the horizon, so it does not have the same kind of meaning that it does for the Siberian shamans in the far north. For the Maya had to look to a different cosmic center. As you get farther south, there is another cosmic center that rises high over the horizon. It is the nuclear bulge in the Milky Way, which is basically the center of our Milky Way galaxy that lies between Sagittarius and Scorpio. The Maya realized, and this was what I believe the paradigm shift was between the older Olmec civilization and the new discoveries made at Izapa, they realized that the true center of the cosmos lies in the nuclear bulge of the galactic center. This can be observed with the naked eye. The Milky Way, of course, is seen as a great white road stretching through the skies at night, and there's a region of the Milky Way that is wider and contains brighter stars. This is the region of the nuclear bulge between the constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpio. The early Maya sky watchers tuned into this part of the sky, and they understood that it was the womb of the Great Mother, the Milky Way, the Great Mother in the sky, and her womb, the great nuclear bulge of the Milky Way. This was seen to be the creation place, and it became the central cosmic center location for Maya civilization. Maya kings had to make a vision journey into the renewing energy of this cosmic womb, and to come back with the sacred knowledge and the power of rulership. So Maya civilization was shamanistic, and there were other elements of shamanism that were central, such as reading oracles, acquiring healing abilities, prophetic visions, as well as a cosmology that was based upon visionary shamanism. The shaman could undertake a visionary journey into the multi-layered domains of human depth psychology, you might say, into the human psyche. And the Maya shaman could return from that visionary journey with real knowledge about how the universe is organized and structured. This is a very, very different way of acquiring knowledge than modern science engages in. Modern science will make external observations, will collect data, examine the data, make graphs and charts, and make postulations around how the universe works. This is what we might call an external method for acquiring knowledge about the universe through the five senses. The Maya and the visionary shaman engages in a very different approach. The shaman will go within and acquire direct knowledge about how the universe operates. This is the Gnostic approach. The methodology of acquiring direct knowledge, direct inner knowledge about how the universe works. We might call it an intuitive approach. The intuitive approach is something that can really get to the heart of a comprehensive vision of how the universe works. And this is basically a very important way of understanding what the Maya bring to us in terms of understanding something very deep and profound about not only making maps of the universe, but understanding how human beings are related to the universe. It's about relationship. It's not so much about objective observation, but it's about understanding the relationship that human beings have with the great processes, the great cycles of time. Now we know that the Maya were time-obsessed, and they were very interested in observing the celestial cycles around them. When we look at the Maya temples in many Mayan cities like Tikal or Palenque or Copan, we notice that they are oriented to the horizons and oriented to astronomy in very specific ways, often to the solstices or the equinox positions of the sun. This is just to say that the Maya were aware that things happening here on Earth are connected to things going on in the sky. This is a very profound understanding. It's basically the as above, so below principle. The processes in the heavens reflect processes on Earth. Another way of saying this is that the microcosm reflects the macrocosm. So it's not so much a sky-earth connection, but also the inner dreams, the inner spiritual unfolding that's happening on the planet is reflected in the outer universe, in the cycles of the planets. So when the Maya built their temple sites and oriented them to the skies in specific ways, they were making a statement about the relationship between their city and the central complex in which the king would sit on his throne and make a visionary journey into the cosmic center, and the relationship between that on Earth and the larger universe. The Maya designed their cities to reflect the cosmic order in the sky above them. The Maya king sat on the throne, which was a symbol of the cosmic center. So the Maya were very interested in understanding where the celestial center was located. We know that the ancient Olmec people considered the polar center to be primary, but there was a paradigm shift that happened at the site of Izapa, in which the earlier polar paradigm was considered to be no longer valid, and a change occurred, a cosmological shift, in which a different cosmic center was located, the galactic center. For the Maya people, this was then seen to be the supreme center. and the Mayan king's throne was seen to be a reflection of this cosmic center. It's very interesting how astronomy and mythology go together. This is one of the principles by which Maya scholars like Linda Sheely have made progress in understanding and interpreting Maya mythology. For example, the Mayan sacred tree reflects an astronomical feature. The Mayan sacred tree is like a cross in the sky, and it's the cross formed by where the Milky Way crosses over the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the path followed by the sun, moon, and planets. So in the sky there is a sacred tree, or a cross, and for the Maya, this cross designated where the cosmic center is located. And it just so happens that where the Milky Way crosses over the ecliptic is right where the galactic center is located. So all of these things link up in a very nice way. And we'll get more into the details of this galactic alignment in 2012 as we proceed. Another hallmark of Maya civilization is the tradition of the sacrifice doctrine. There's been a lot of discussion around this, and I've looked into this tradition in various ways, and I believe that it's possible to parse back through the applications of this sacrifice doctrine to a very early understanding of the true spiritual basis of what it's about. Often, as a civilization progresses, you have a degradation of original teachings. And I believe that there's a perennial teaching, a perennial wisdom at the heart of the Mayan sacrifice doctrine. It's often pointed out that the Maya sacrificed human beings and sacrificed blood, and the Aztecs certainly engaged in this barbaric practice to a very high degree right before the conquest in the early 1500s. And it's certainly true that any high civilization will engage in all the full spectrum of Mayan practices, from the highest spiritual epiphanies to the most barbaric practices of human sacrifice, often at the same time. But I think we can also see an evolution of the sacrifice doctrine from what was originally a very pure spiritual application of it, down through the centuries, down through the millennia, to its most gross degradation, in which you have actual human sacrifice taking place. So the original spiritual teaching of the sacrifice doctrine is much like you have it in the perennial wisdom teachings of the Far East, for example, in which it's really about, let's say, sacrificing the self, or sacrificing the ego. The ego, in psychological terms, is considered to be that complex of self-identity that is involved in our personal identities and our incarnated selves. Ego serves a function, but it can also run rampant with megalomania. There can be sort of an extreme selfishness that accretes around the ego, such that it blinds us to having a real connection with our true selves. And the true self is an eternal, infinite source consciousness. These are all really perennial teachings. You have this dualism between the limited consciousness that accretes around the ego and the eternal divine self from which we all spring. So I believe that there was an original spiritual application of the sacrifice doctrine in which it wasn't about a literal heart sacrifice. Instead, it was about placing the heart in service to the higher principle of the true eternal self. In a similar way, to sacrifice the ego is not to annihilate the ego, but it's to make the ego transparent so that the eternal divine wisdom of the true self can shine through. This is really a core perennial wisdom teaching that we find embedded in the Maya creation mythology, and it's encoded on the carved monuments of Izapa. So there's very tangible spiritual teachings, and there's a prophecy for the cycle ending of 2012 as we look more deeply at the wisdom that's preserved for us today on the carved monuments of Izapa, we'll start to understand exactly how we can come back into right relationship with our true eternal selves. The Maya civilization is known for many amazing discoveries and traditions and institutions. Hieroglyphic writing, for example. There are many texts preserved on Mayan ceramics, on the stone carved monuments. It is true that there are only 4 surviving Mayan books, but there's a wealth of other sources of these hieroglyphic texts. And scholars today have deciphered about 90% of the hieroglyphic writing, so we're really starting to understand what was happening at these Mayan cities like Yaxchilan or Copan, almost on a week-to-week basis. Another tradition that the Maya practiced was the ball game. The sacred ball game is very central to the Maya creation mythology. In the ball game, you had players on both sides, and they had to kick the ball into the goal ring. Now, they had to use their feet or their hips. They couldn't use their hands. And it was quite difficult to kick this big rubber ball into the goal ring that was often very high on the wall of the ball court. The thing to understand about the ball game is that it wasn't so much about athletic prowess. The ball game was really like a mystery play, reenacting the events of creation. And we'll see exactly how the ball game preserves a spiritual teaching that applies to the 2012 end date. The Maya were very interested in centering their domain, and they were also very interested in world renewal. At the end of a cycle in their calendar, they performed certain ceremonies and rites in which the old was recognized as ending and the new was beginning. It's important to understand that they saw these end-beginning nexi in the calendar, the transition points between the old cycle and the new cycle, as not involving a definite end in an apocalyptic sense. I believe that the apocalyptic notion comes largely from an idea of linear time that we get from the Judeo-Christian tradition. The indigenous calendars of the Maya were tuned into the cyclic nature of time. I believe this is a more sophisticated way of understanding the true nature of time, that time moves in cycles. But there's a problem with this because it's hard to conceive of where the end and beginning of a circle is. I believe there's another more profound way that we can think of cyclical time. This has to do with Mayan time philosophy, and in my research, it was almost like my research allowed for a deepening understanding through the years of working with the Maya calendar, peeling back the layers of an onion, in a sense, getting deeper and deeper into the true meaning of the Maya calendar. First of all, linear time is really kind of a limited understanding of time. We get this from the Judeo-Christian tradition, and it gives rise to a concept of apocalyptic endings, final endings. And this just does not sit well with people that are tuned into indigenous philosophies and oriental philosophies of time, in which cyclic time is really the thing. Time moves in cycles. But it's really hard to identify where the end and beginning of a cycle is. It's just a wheel. There's a more profound way of conceptualizing this, and I think it speaks very well for a profound understanding that the Maya had. The analogy I like to use is the breath cycle. We breathe in and we breathe out. The breath is a cycle, but in a sense there's an inward motion and there's an outward motion. So it's interesting to conceive of cyclical time as a moving in and a moving out of intimacy with our cosmic source. The center of the cycle is when all the energy has retracted inward and collected into the center. And then there's the outward motion of the breath, in which everything is dispersing away from the center. This is really a way that we can understand the vast cycles of time that the Maya were tuning into, especially this 26,000-year great cycle of the precession of the equinoxes, what we can refer to as a collective spiritual gestation. At the end of this cycle, that's when we are coming back into intimate relationship or alignment with the cosmic center, the galactic center. This is what's happening in the years around 2012. We on Earth are aligning with the center of our Milky Way galaxy. So I like to think of 2012 not so much as the end of time, but the center of time. The center of Mayan time is the era in which time is transcended and we come back into intimate relationship with the center and origin. As we get into the spiritual teachings that are preserved on the carved monuments of Izapa, we'll understand more deeply what the center of Mayan time means. The Maya calendars. There are fundamental facts in how the Maya calendars operate, and we can get into this a little bit. It's important to at least have a working knowledge of how the calendars operate, and there's several different features that we have to discuss. It's kind of the mechanics of how the calendars work, but we'll also see that there are deeper spiritual teachings and deeper metaphysical meanings that are encoded into the Maya calendars. First of all, the building block of the Maya calendar systems, basically the core building block is the 260-day sacred calendar. This is called the Tzolk'in, the count of days, and 260 is a key numerological number for the Maya. The calendar system is built up from a combination of 13 numbers and 20 day signs. It's said that the 13 numbers derive from the period of time that it takes the moon to move from new to full. Now, this might seem a little counterintuitive because half of a moon cycle is actually 14 and a half days, but the Maya were observational sky watchers. They actually started counting the moon from the first time that the sliver of the new moon appeared in the western sky right after sundown. So that's day one. It's actually a day or two after moon dark. So we start there, and then we count forward as the moon grows and waxes and inflates to fullness. This is a paradigm of consciousness unfolding, of increase. And after 13 days, we reach the point where the moon is full. So 13 is associated with the moon. Apparently, the 20-day signs come from the 20 fingers and toes. The modern Quiche Maya offer this as an explanation for why there are 20-day signs. Now, there are different meanings in different groups that are ascribed to the 20-day signs. The standard day signs that are often used come from the Yucatec Maya, and the 20-day signs are usually counted beginning with Imish. Imish, Ik, Akbal, Kan, Chikchan, Kimi, Manik, Lamat, Maluk, Ok, Chuen, Eb, Ben, Ish, Men, Kib, Kaban, Etznab, Koak, Ahau. These are the 20-day signs in the Yucatec Maya language. As for the English translation of the meanings, I like to use the Quiche Maya meanings. The Quiche Maya live in the highlands of Guatemala, and it's there in the highlands of Guatemala where the ancient daykeeper tradition still survives. So it's very important to tune right into the surviving tradition. The first day sign that I listed was Imish, and that corresponds to alligator. So the 20-day signs are as follows: alligator, wind, house, lizard, serpent, death, deer, rabbit, rain, dog, monkey, tooth, staff, jaguar, eagle, owl, quake, knife, storm, and marksman. Now, these are like archetypes, 20 archetypes, and the daykeepers used these archetypes to cast readings for clients. It's like an oracle tradition. So if a person came to a daykeeper, they would cast the seeds and the crystals, and they would count out, and they would arrive at a reading to answer the question that was posed by the client. Another important thing about the way that these 20 day signs and 13 numbers operate is that they count off together. So the 13 numbers lend a quality of intensity. So starting with 1, they would click off together, such as 1 alligator, 2 wind, 3 house, and so on. The 13 numbers and 20 day signs come back together after 260 days. 13 times 20 equals 260. The 260-day Tzolk'in calendar is the key building block of the Mayan time philosophy. 13 numbers and 20 day signs. The number 260 is really a magical number, and it's a key that operates in many dimensions of human experience. For example, the Maya recognize that 260 is the period of embryogenesis. In fact, Maya daykeepers today offer the 9-month period of human gestation as the reason behind the 260-day cycle. This is the Tzolk'in operating in the domain of human biology. The 260-day embryogenesis period is that first great cycle of unfolding that all human beings experience. And because of this, it is the key to the idea that all key critical experiences in life unfold in resonant relationship with this great cycle, this 260-day cycle. Now, the Tzolk'in also operates in the domain of agriculture. In the highlands of Guatemala, there are 260 days between the planting and harvesting of corn. This is an example of how the 260-day cycle schedules the gestation of corn. And corn, of course, is the flesh of human beings in the Maya creation myth. So here we have the Tzolk'in operating in the domain of an earth agriculture cycle. Now, most importantly, the Tzolk'in is a key that schedules various astronomical cycles. For example, eclipses. The eclipse half cycle is 173 days. 3 of these eclipse half cycles, which is the interval between eclipses, equal 520 days. This is 2 Tzolk'in periods. So right away we see how the Tzolk'in is a key to the eclipse cycles. And also, the Tzolk'in is used in the Maya calendar almanacs, which are sort of like calendars that schedule various astronomical cycles like the periods of Venus or the Moon or even Mars and Mercury. So here we see how the Tzolk'in calendar operates in many domains of human experience, from human biology to agriculture to astronomy. This is just basically to say that the Tzolk'in is a key that unites the celestial processes as well as terrestrial processes. As above, so below. The 260-day Tzolk'in combines with the 365-day Hab, or vague solar year. These two combining together create a calendar round period, which is just under 52 years. The Venus cycle comes into the picture, and every 2 calendar rounds, Venus comes around to unite with the Tzolk'in and the Hab, and this generates the Venus round calendar, which culminates on the sacred day of Venus, 1 Ahau, every 104 years. There's an interesting relationship between the cycles of Venus and the Sun. Every 584 days, Venus rises as morning star. 5 of these cycles equal 8 solar years. So we have a 5-8 ratio. This is a very, very important key ratio. The 5-8 ratio evokes the golden proportion. The golden proportion is a universal principle, and it's part of the sacred sciences that we find in, say, ancient Egyptian cosmology. Phi, or the golden proportion, is a very unique number, 1.618. 1.618 is self-referential. It builds upon itself. Basically, it's a unique, irrational number in nature that gives rise to organic spirals, as we see in pine cones and hurricanes and so on. It's basically rooted in the square root of 5. Now there are 2 other sacred science principles that are at the core of the Maya calendar, the square root 3 and the square root 2. These are the 3 square root principles that we find in the sacred sciences of antiquity. You find them in ancient Egyptian cosmology as well as Greek philosophy. And when I started getting involved in researching the Maya calendar, I was very interested in sort of peeling back the layers of the onion to understand what lies at the heart of the Tzolk'in calendar. And after many years of research, I determined that the mathematical core of the Maya calendar is the 3 square root principles. Now, apart from the mathematics, there's an entire philosophy of time and change, of multiplicity and flowering, that go with these 3 square root principles. Furthermore, as my research deepened, I realized that these principles are embedded inside of the spiritual and metaphysical teachings of many of the world's great religious traditions, and often they are made human, anthropomorphized, you might say. The 3 mathematical square root principles are basically logos, eros, and dios. So we can see how these philosophical principles can be made into deity avatars, you might say. So this is just sort of a preliminary way of understanding how the trinary core of the Tzolk'in mathematics and philosophy is something that gives rise to a philosophy of time and change that can be represented by 3 deities. And we'll get into this more as we get into the spiritual teachings at Izapa. So there's an entire framework for the Maya calendar that revolves around the calendar round system. It embraces the cycle of Venus, as well as the cycles of the 260-day Tzolk'in and the 365-day Hab. So the calendar round is like the Tzolk'in Hab system, and this is really one of 2 main calendars that the Maya developed. What's interesting about the Tzolk'in tradition is that the 260-day calendar still survives in the highlands of Guatemala. It's still counted and followed by daykeepers among the Quiche and the Quechua and the Mam Maya people in the highlands of Guatemala. This is a phenomenal thing to acknowledge, that the 260-day calendar in an unbroken sequence is still being followed in the highlands. The long count calendar, on the other hand, was lost. The long count system does not survive among any Mayan groups. And so the tradition of the long count, the beliefs associated with it, and the embedded astronomy and mythological ideas of world ages that go with it had to be reconstructed by looking at the various Mayan traditions that relate to it. The long count calendar is basically a system of nested periods of time, and there are basically 5 levels. First, there's the day, and then there's a 20-day period called a RENEWAL. Then there's a 360-day period called the Tun. It's just under a year. The 20-year period is called the Katun. And 20 Katuns equal a Baktun. A Baktun is just under 400 years. Now, there's a tradition on the carved monuments. They call them creation monuments because they relate to the beginning and end of the current world age. And it's a 13 Baktun cycle. 13 Baktuns is about 5,125 years. This is the calendar that gives us the 2012 end date. But how do we know that the 13 Baktun cycle ends on December 21st, 2012? Well, this question has to do with how this calendar, how the Maya calendar correlates with our own calendar. Scholars were very interested in this question going back to the 1890s because they were finding many carved monuments dated in the long count calendar. On the carved monuments, the long count was represented with a series of dots and bars and glyphs that represented the various periods, such as the Tun or the Katun or the Baktun. So scholars made great progress in deciphering how the long count calendar works. However, the correlation of the calendar took many, many years to figure out. A pioneer in this endeavor was not a professional scholar. He was a banker named Joseph T. Goodman, and in 1904 he published the results of his investigations that provided the key to understanding the correlation of Mayan time with our own calendar, so that we would know for certain how these various dated monuments could be correlated in real time. We wanted to know whether Palenque thrived in the 7th century AD or the 10th century AD, and it was only possible to understand this by figuring out the Maya calendar correlation. This endeavor stretched over many decades, actually. There were various critics, and more information and data had to be assessed. The correlation theory had to be tested, and finally, by 1950, the so-called Goodman-Martinez-Thompson correlation was figured out. And this pretty much settled the question. The correlation is known as the GMT correlation, and it's basically fixed by understanding the 0 day of the 13 Baktun cycle. The question that scholars wanted to answer was, what day was it when all of the place values of the long count were set to 0? This was the first day of the current 13 Baktun cycle. So, basically, the correlation indicates that the 0 day of the 13 Baktun cycle occurred on August 11th of 3114 BC. Well, this was the key to understanding Mayan history. Eventually, scholars realized that the 13 Baktun cycle was an important aspect of the Mayan doctrine of world ages. The world age doctrine, as we find it in the Maya creation mythology, suggests that human beings have passed through a series of world ages, and each one would last 13 Baktuns. We are currently in the 5th world age, and it's about to end in 2012. So scholars projected forward to the end of the current 13 Baktun cycle to determine the end date, and by mathematical calculation they arrived at the end date, December 21st of 2012. So the important thing to understand in all of this is that the correlation is really a settled question. There's been quite a bit of discussion recently and conflicting opinions on how the Maya calendar correlates with our own calendar. And these conflicts and confusions relate to how much we can be in unity in discussing the Maya calendar. December 21st, 2012 is basically the cycle ending for the 13 Baktun cycle. We know this for certain. Another aspect of this whole question is the question of what day is it today in the 260-day Tzolk'in calendar. Well, this is very important because people like to follow the Tzolk'in calendar. People like to read oracles from it, and also people are interested in knowing what day they were born on in the 260-day calendar. As I mentioned earlier, the 260-day calendar survives in the highlands of Guatemala. The authentic traditional calendar is still being followed by Maya daykeepers today. So we could go to Guatemala and ask a daykeeper what day is it today, and they would tell us, and we can actually perform a test on whether or not they're following the same Tzolk'in calendar that was followed during the classic Maya period, because based upon the creation monuments, we know that the end of the 13 Baktun cycle should fall on the Tzolk'in day for a how. This is embedded in many creation monuments that we found. So this kind of provides a secondary test. We can go to Guatemala, ask a daykeeper what day it is today, and then count forward and see if we reach for a how on December 21st, 2012. When we do this, sure enough, we find that the count still followed in Guatemala is the authentic count. It's the count that basically makes, let's say, December 25th, Christmas Day of 2007, falls on 1 Kaban, or January 1st of the year 2010 falls on 11 Men, or August 11th of 2008 falls on 10 Manik. All of these dates provide confirmation. This is what I refer to as the true count. The true count and its survival, it's very important to recognize to be aligned with the authentic Maya calendar tradition and to honor the fact that it survives. So all of this comes back to a very simple equation that I've coined. I call it the equation of Mayan time. It's basically the equation December 21st of 2012 equals the end of the 13 Baktun cycle, which would be written 13.0.0.0.0 equals for a how. So it's important that as we get closer to 2012, we are all on the same page with the Maya as to what day it is today in the Maya calendar. The 13 Baktun cycle in the long count calendar is a world age period. And in the Maya creation mythology, the Popol Vuh, we have a story about how human beings have passed through a series of world ages. At the end of each world age, human beings must transform themselves in order to pass into the next era. Here we can see that the creation mythology and the long count calendar go together very nicely. The long count calendar provides the calendrics and the astronomy, and the creation myth provides the mythology. This is a truism of Mayan studies. Mayan mythology and astronomy go together. Well, how is it that the long count calendar is related to astronomy? This has to do with my own pioneering research into these questions. In the mid-90s, I turned to the question of why did the Maya pick this 2012 date to end a vast cycle of time? Well, we can suspect that there's some kind of intentionality behind it because it does end on an accurate winter solstice. So, knowing that the world age doctrine, these vast periods of time, are usually scheduling something related to the precession of the equinoxes, I look to astronomy to determine why 2012. And basically what I discovered in my research is that it has to do with this rare astronomical alignment that we can call the galactic alignment. In the years around 2012, the December solstice sun will be lining up with the Milky Way galaxy. And there's a feature that lies along the Milky Way galaxy called the Dark Rift. The Dark Rift in the Milky Way is caused by interstellar dust clouds, and it's a feature of Mayan mythology. It's called the Xibalba Bay. It's the road to the underworld. So basically, the ancient Maya sky watchers, when they fixed their long count calendar, they were projecting forward to this rare astronomical alignment when First Father, the first solar lord, the December solstice sun, came into alignment with the dark rift in the Milky Way, the Xibalba Bay, the road to the other world. They believed that this cosmic alignment would bode a situation in which the world would be reborn. And as we look at the Maya creation mythology, we'll see exactly how the astronomy of 2012 is encoded into the hero twin story. The creation myth of the Maya comes down to us today and is known as the Popol Vuh, or the hero twin creation myth. It was recorded by Mayan elders in Guatemala in the 1550s. It's believed that they were working from a hieroglyphic book and basically recording for posterity ancient legends of the Maya people. So we have the Popol Vuh today, and it describes the hero twin creation myth. Basically, in a nutshell, the first part of the Popol Vuh talks about a series of world ages. And the first world age is destroyed by jaguars and wild animals. The second world age is destroyed by wind. The third world age is destroyed by fire. The fourth world age is destroyed by flood. And the current world age is scheduled to be destroyed by earthquakes. Now, this description of the world ages being destroyed, we have to understand the deeper perennial philosophy or perennial wisdom that's encoded into these stories. There is the sort of superficial storyline that can be talked about in terms of world destructions. But we have to understand that what's really going on here are periods of time, and a world indicates a chapter of human experience. So we really have to talk about a chapter of human experience coming to an end, and human beings moving into the next cycle. What's always embedded in the World Age doctrine is the idea of transformation and renewal. And another thing embedded into this World Age doctrine is the idea that human beings are indispensable participants in the process of transformation. It's all about free will. There's no predetermined what's going to happen in this doctrine. A lot of questions today revolve around what's going to happen in 2012. I think this is sort of based on a misunderstanding of the World Age material. The teaching, as we can really understand it, has to do with free will, participation, transformation, and renewal. As the Popol Vuh brings us into the current world age, we get a lot more detail. The hero twins and their father, One Hunahpu, and other characters like the Lords of Xibalba and Seven Macaw all come into focus and provide mythological stories that encode spiritual teachings that apply directly to the 2012 cycle ending date. The hero twin creation myth encodes the astronomical alignment that culminates in 2012. And this is how it works. Basically, the main character in the story is One Hunahpu. This is the father of the hero twins. He has an astronomical identity. One Hunahpu, first father. He's the first solar lord. He's the first son of the year. Basically, His astronomical identity is the December solstice sun. At the very end of the myth, the hero twins succeed in facilitating the resurrection of their father. And this is the mythological metaphor that applies to how the December solstice sun moves into alignment with the renewing fires of the galactic center, the womb of the great mother Milky Way. So Wanhunaphu is playing ball. He's a ball player. He's making a racket. And the lords of the underworld hear him making a racket above them, and they call him, and they challenge him to a ball game. So Wanhunaphu accepts the challenge, and he has to pass into the underworld through the road to the underworld, which is the dark rift in the Milky Way. So we already see how this mythological story is encoding a kind of mythological astronomical topography. It's basically encoding a story that happens in the sky. Wanhunaphu passes through the dark rift in the Milky Way and journeys into the underworld. And he does battle with the lords of Xibalba, and they trick him, and they kill him, they sacrifice him. He made a mistake, and they cut off his head. They hang the head of Wanhunaphu in the branches of a calabash tree. This calabash tree is a mythological metaphor for the Milky Way, and his head is metaphorically being hung in the dark rift in the Milky Way. This is a place of rebirth and conception. The dark rift has many astronomical and mythological identities associated with it. It's not that every single astronomical feature has one mythological identity. Often you find multiple meanings associated with a given astronomical feature. Like the dark rift, for example. It was the road to the underworld, but it could also be thought of as the mouth of the Milky Way snake. It could also be thought of as the goal ring in the ball game. This is because the Milky Way itself was thought of as the ball court. So the dark rift in the Milky Way, which is kind of like a portal or a hole in the sky, a doorway, was conceptualized as the goal ring. Most importantly, perhaps, it was conceived as the birth canal of the Great Mother, the Milky Way. So it's a birthplace. It's a rebirth place in the sky, and this is how we can understand the end date galactic alignment as a great rebirth, a cosmogenesis, the rebirth of the world. Wanhunaphu's head is hung in the dark rift in the Milky Way, in the calabash tree. A daughter of one of the lesser lords of Xibalba comes along. Her name is Blood Moon. And she notices the calabash tree, and it speaks to her. And it says, "Hold out your hand." And she holds out her hand, and the skull spits into her palm, and magically conceives the hero twins. They're born 9 months later, and the hero twins are destined to avenge the death of their father, Wanhunaphu. So time goes on, the hero twins grow, and they're playing the ball game, and they too are challenged to a ball game by the lords of Xibalba. So like their father, Wanhunaphu, they travel through the dark rift in the Milky Way, the Xibalba Bay, into the underworld. But they fare better than their father, and they are prepared to understand that the lords of Xibalba are trying to trick them and do them in. And eventually the hero twins succeed in playing the ball game with the lords of Xibalba, and they win. They trick the lords of Xibalba, and they sacrifice them. And they're able to facilitate the resurrection of their father, Wanhunaphu. While the hero twins are playing ball with the lords of Xibalba, they substitute the head of their father as the game ball, and they're kicking it around. And of course, when the game ball goes into the goal ring, that means the game is over and the hero twins win. And that's exactly what happens. The hero twins succeed in tricking the Dark Lords, and they're successful in facilitating the resurrection of their father, Wanhunaphu. Now notice that the head of one Hunahpu is used as the game ball. Remember that the astronomical identity of one Hunahpu was the December solstice sun? His head is the December solstice sun as the game ball. So now we can see how the game itself is a metaphor for the astronomical alignment that culminates in 2012. The December solstice sun is the game ball. It's moving towards the dark rift in the Milky Way. The dark rift in the Milky Way is the goal ring in the cosmic ball court. When the hero twins kick the game ball into the goal ring, that means that the cycle of time is over, and they're able to facilitate the resurrection of their father. They basically are able to restore the head to the body, to make their father whole again. This is a beautiful mythological story that involves the creation mythology as well as the sacred ball game to encode the astronomical process, the astronomical alignment that culminates in 2012. And we should remember that this solstice galaxy alignment that culminates in 2012 is a very, very rare astronomical alignment within the cycle of the precession of the equinoxes. It's an alignment that happens only once every 26,000 years. So here we can see that the creation myth and the long count calendar go together in a grand unified vision of the redemption of humanity at the end of the cycle. We can also see how the Maya creation myth with its ball game and the hero twins encode perennial teachings. Most astonishingly, the Popol Vuh that comes down to us today, although it was recorded in the 1550s, has a much more ancient legacy. In fact, the carved monuments of Izapa, a site that was thriving in the 1st century BC, these carved monuments encode very, very early portrayals of the hero twin creation myth. For this reason, we can understand that Izapa was the place that not only invented the long count calendar that gives us the 2012 end date, but it was also the place that invented the creation myth that encodes the astronomical alignment that culminates in 2012. Now that we have an understanding in how the Maya creation myth and the long count go together and are rooted in the pioneering achievements at Izapa, revealing to us profound galactic revelations for 2012, in the next session I'd like to switch gears and share some of my own background, my experiences traveling through Maya land, and the process by which I was led deeper and deeper into these galactic mysteries.